A wife's jealousy erupts when she suspects her husband's scandalous affair with their maid. What begins as suspicion spirals into rage, and the truth she uncovers is far darker than betrayal. Hidden corruption, infertility, and dangerous ties will tear their family apart. Stay with me until the end, because the final twist will leave you speechless. Subscribe now, because this scandal is only the beginning. The Johnson penthouse towered above downtown Atlanta, its glass walls glittering against the skyline like a beacon of success. Inside, however, the atmosphere was suffocating, heavy with tension that no wealth could disguise. Margaret Johnson, refined yet restless, paced the living room with sharp, deliberate steps. Her husband, Charles, had grown distant. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls, unexplained absences. The man who once adored her now felt like a stranger, and Margaret's suspicions had hardened into rage. Her gaze locked on Angela, the maid. Angela was young, graceful, and always nearby. Margaret noticed the subtle glances, the awkward silences, the way Charles's tone softened when Angela entered the room. To Margaret, it wasn't coincidence, it was betrayal. Her voice trembled, sharp with fury. "Charles, I see the way you look at her, the way she lingers when you're around. You think I don't notice?" Angela froze, clutching a basket of folded laundry, her face pale. She opened her mouth to speak but stopped, her silence only deepening Margaret's fury. Charles stepped in, his polished facade cracking under the weight of his wife's accusations. "Margaret, you're wrong. You don't understand." But Margaret wasn't wrong in her mind. She was unraveling. The humiliation, the jealousy, the gnawing suspicion had built into a storm that was ready to break. Outside, the Atlanta skyline glittered with promise. Inside, Margaret's world was trembling on the edge of collapse. What began as suspicion was about to ignite into a moment that would change everything. Suck. The following morning, the Johnson penthouse was quiet, but Margaret's mind was anything but. She sat at the breakfast table, untouched coffee cooling beside her. Across the room, Angela moved gracefully, setting plates and tidying the counters. Every gesture felt rehearsed, every glance suspicious. Margaret's eyes followed her like a hawk. Why does she move so carefully? Why does she avoid looking at me? The questions gnawed at her, feeding the storm inside. Charles entered, adjusting his tie, his phone buzzing in his hand. He glanced at Angela briefly, then quickly looked away. To Margaret, that single flicker of attention was proof enough. Leaving early again, Margaret's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Charles sighed. "I have meetings. You know how it is." Margaret leaned forward, her tone dripping with accusation. "Meetings? Or Angela?" Angela froze, her hands tightening around a dish towel. "Mrs. Johnson, don't speak," Margaret snapped, her fury spilling over. "I see the way you linger. I see the way he looks at you. Do you think I'm blind?" Charles's face tightened, frustration mixing with guilt. "Margaret, you're twisting everything. You don't understand what's happening." But Margaret didn't want explanations. She wanted the truth, and she wanted it now. The tension in the room was unbearable. Angela's silence, Charles's defensiveness, Margaret's rage. It was a triangle of suspicion ready to collapse. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside the Johnson penthouse, paranoia was consuming Margaret. She was convinced her husband was betraying her with the maid. And deep down, Charles knew that the secret he carried was far more dangerous than she imagined. By evening, Margaret's fury had reached its breaking point. The penthouse was quiet, but inside her chest, rage thundered like a storm. She had replayed every glance, every silence, every late night, until the truth felt undeniable. Angela was folding laundry in the corner when Margaret stormed in, her eyes blazing. "Enough of this charade," she shouted, her voice echoing against the marble walls. "I know what's happening between you and Charles." Angela's hands trembled, the folded shirt slipping from her grasp. "Mrs. Johnson, please, it's not what you think." Margaret advanced, her tone sharp and venomous. "Don't lie to me. I see the way he looks at you. I hear the whispers. Do you think you can humiliate me in my own home?" Charles rushed in, his face pale, his composure unraveling. "Margaret, stop this madness." His voice cracked, betraying a desperation he could no longer hide. Margaret turned on him, her fury unrelenting. "Madness? You call this madness? You've been sneaking around, making me feel like a fool. Tell me the truth, Charles. Tell me what you've been hiding." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Angela's eyes darted between them. Fear etched across her face. Charles's jaw tightened, his hands trembling as if the weight of his secret was crushing him. But instead of confessing, he whispered, "You wouldn't understand." Margaret's rage only deepened. To her, his refusal was proof of betrayal. To Angela, it was a terrifying sign that something darker was at play. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Inside, the Johnson family was collapsing under the weight of suspicion, lies, and secrets too dangerous to reveal. The tension in the Johnson penthouse had reached a boiling point, quite literally. Margaret's fury had been simmering for days, and tonight it overflowed. Angela was in the kitchen, quietly rinsing dishes when Margaret stormed in. Her eyes were wild, her voice trembling with rage. "You think you can steal my husband? You think you can humiliate me in my own home?" Angela turned, startled, her hands dripping with soap and water. "Mrs. Johnson, please. I swear it's not what you think." But Margaret wasn't listening. Her humiliation had transformed into blind rage. She grabbed the kettle from the stove, steam rising from its spout. Charles rushed in, panic flashing across his face. "Margaret, stop. This isn't the way." But Margaret's fury drowned out his pleas. With a scream that echoed through the penthouse, she hurled the scalding water toward Angela. Angela cried out, stumbling back, the hot water splashing across her arm. The pain was immediate, sharp, and unbearable. She dropped the dish, clutching her skin, tears streaming down her face. Charles froze, horror etched across his features. "Margaret, what have you done?" Margaret stood trembling, the empty kettle shaking in her hand. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide with a mix of satisfaction and regret. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by Angela's sobs. Outside, the Atlanta skyline glittered indifferently, unaware of the chaos unfolding inside. Inside, the Johnson family had crossed a line that could never be undone. Margaret thought she had punished betrayal, but in truth, she had unleashed a chain of events that would expose secrets far darker than she imagined. The kitchen was silent except for Angela's muffled sobs. She sat on the floor, clutching her scalded arm, tears streaking down her face. The pain was unbearable, but the humiliation cut even deeper. Margaret stood frozen, the empty kettle still trembling in her hand. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide with a mix of satisfaction and regret. She had wanted to punish betrayal, but now the sight of Angela's suffering unsettled her. Charles rushed to Angela's side, kneeling beside her. "Angela, let me see," he whispered, his voice trembling. He reached for her arm, his face pale with horror. Margaret's fury reignited at the sight. "Don't touch her. Don't you dare," she screamed, her voice echoing through the penthouse. Charles turned, his composure shattered. "Margaret, look at what you've done. This isn't about jealousy anymore. This is cruelty." Angela winced, her voice weak, but steady. "Mr. Johnson, please don't make this worse." Margaret's eyes narrowed, her suspicion deepening. "Listen to her. She protects you even now. Were you hiding, Charles? What secret binds you to her?" Charles's jaw tightened, his hands trembling. He wanted to speak, to confess, but the words caught in his throat. The infection, the shame, the truth he had buried for years, it pressed against him like a weight too heavy to bear. The room was suffocating. Angela's pain, Margaret's rage, Charles's silence. It was a triangle of destruction, each moment pulling them closer to collapse. Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, the Johnson family was unraveling, one secret at a time. The Johnson penthouse was cloaked in silence after the chaos. Angela sat on the couch, her arm bandaged, her eyes red from tears. Margaret stood by the window, her reflection fractured in the glass, her chest still heaving with rage. Charles lingered in the doorway, his face pale, his hands trembling. Margaret's voice cut through the silence. You protect her. You defend her. Why, Charles? What is she to you? Charles swallowed hard, his throat dry. It's not what you think. Margaret spun around, her fury reigniting. Then tell me what it is. Tell me why you risk our marriage, our family, for her. Angela shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on the floor. She knew more than she wanted to admit, but fear kept her silent. Charles stepped forward, his composure unraveling. Margaret, there are things you don't know. Things I've hidden because I couldn't bear to tell you. Margaret's eyes narrowed, suspicion sharpening into desperation. Hidden? What have you hidden from me? Charles's voice cracked, his words heavy with shame. I've been sick. For years. An infection. It changed everything. I couldn't give you the family you wanted. I couldn't make you pregnant. The confession hung in the air like a bomb. Margaret's face drained of color, her fury colliding with disbelief. Angela's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. Charles lowered his head, his voice barely a whisper. Angela knows. She's been helping me. More than you realize. The room froze. Margaret's rage, Angela's silence, Charles's shame, all collided in a moment that shattered the illusion of their perfect life. Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, the Johnson family's darkest secret had begun to surface. The Johnson penthouse felt colder than ever. Margaret stood frozen, her mind reeling from Charles's confession. The infection, the infertility, the years of silence. It was as if the foundation of her marriage had crumbled in an instant. Her voice shook, torn between fury and heartbreak. All these years, you let me believe it was me? That I was the reason we couldn't have children. You let me carry that shame alone. Charles's eyes glistened, his voice heavy with regret. I thought I was protecting you. I couldn't bear to tell you the truth. I was ashamed. Angela shifted uncomfortably, her bandaged arm resting against her side. She spoke softly, her words trembling. Mrs. Johnson, I never wanted to come between you. I only knew because Mr. Johnson confided in me. I tried to help. Margaret's gaze snapped to Angela, her fury reigniting. Help? By keeping a secret? By letting me live in humiliation while you played the savior? Angela's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it was better if you didn't know. Margaret's chest heaved, her emotions spiraling. Betrayal, humiliation, grief, all colliding at once. She turned to Charles, her voice breaking. You didn't just betray me with her. You betrayed me with your silence. You destroyed us. Charles lowered his head, his shame consuming him. I never meant for it to end like this. The room was suffocating, the weight of secrets pressing down on them all. Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, Margaret's illusions of love and loyalty had shattered beyond repair. The Johnson penthouse was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. Margaret sat rigidly in the living room, her eyes hollow, her mind replaying Charles's confession over and over. The infection, the infertility, the betrayal. But beneath her fury, a new question gnawed at her. What else has he been hiding? Charles paced the room, his hands trembling. Margaret, I didn't want you to know. I thought I could fix it quietly. Margaret's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. Fix it? With her? With Angela? Or with the other women you've been sneaking around with? Angela flinched, her bandaged arm pressed against her side. Mrs. Johnson, please, it's not like that. But Margaret wasn't listening. Her rage had shifted into suspicion of something larger. You've been lying for years, Charles. And now I wonder, who else knows? Who else have you dragged into this? Charles froze, his silence damning. Margaret's eyes narrowed. It's not just about the infection, is it? There's more. Something darker. Charles's voice cracked, his shame spilling out. I've been desperate. I sought help in places I shouldn't have. I made deals with people who promised cures, treatments. But they weren't doctors. They weren't safe. Angela's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "Mr. Johnson, you mean those men who came by last month? The ones who asked questions?" Margaret's breath caught, her fury colliding with dread. "You brought corruption into this house. You risked everything. Our marriage, our family, our safety for your secrets." Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, the Johnson family was entangled in betrayal, illness, and dangerous ties that threatened to destroy them all. The Johnson penthouse no longer felt safe. Margaret sat rigidly in the living room, her eyes burning with fury and dread. Charles's confession about shady dealings had cracked open a door she couldn't close. Her voice was sharp, trembling with rage. "You brought criminals into our home. You risked everything. Our marriage, our family, our reputation for your secrets." Charles's face was pale, his hands shaking. "I was desperate, Margaret. I wanted to fix what was broken. I thought they could help me." Angela shifted uneasily, her bandaged arm resting against her lap. "Mrs. Johnson, those men weren't doctors. They asked questions about you, about your finances. I didn't trust them." Margaret's chest tightened, her fury colliding with fear. "So it wasn't just betrayal. It was corruption. You've dragged us into danger, Charles. Do you even realize what you've done?" Charles lowered his head, shame consuming him. "I thought I could keep it hidden. I thought I could protect you." But Margaret wasn't convinced. She rose to her feet, her voice trembling with both rage and heartbreak. "Protect me? You've destroyed me. You've destroyed us. And now you've put us all in danger." Angela's eyes darted toward the window, her voice hushed. "Mrs. Johnson, I think they're watching. I saw a car outside earlier. It's been there for hours." The room froze. Margaret's fury, Charles's shame, Angela's fear, all collided in a moment of realization. The dangerous ties Charles had made were closing in, and the Johnson family was trapped in a scandal that threatened not just their marriage, but their very safety. Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, the Johnson family's collapse was accelerating toward a devastating climax. The Johnson penthouse was no longer a sanctuary of wealth. It was a prison of secrets. Margaret stood trembling, her eyes blazing with fury, her heart shattered by betrayal. Angela sat weakly on the couch, her bandaged arm throbbing, her silence heavy with fear. Charles lingered near the door, his face pale, his shame consuming him. Margaret's voice cracked, raw with pain. "You hid the truth from me. You let me carry the shame of infertility while you knew it was your sickness. And now you drag criminals into our lives? You've destroyed everything." Charles's voice trembled. "I thought I could fix it. I thought I could find a cure. But the men I trusted, they weren't healers. They were predators. And now they want more than money." Angela's eyes widened, her voice hushed. "Mr. Johnson, those men outside, they're not just watching. They're waiting." The room froze. Margaret's fury collided with dread. Waiting? For what? Charles's silence was the answer. His infection, his desperation, his secret dealings, they had all backfired. The men he trusted now threatened them all. Suddenly, a knock thundered against the penthouse door. Margaret flinched. Angela gasped. Charles's face drained of color. The sound echoed like a death knell. Margaret's voice broke, trembling with both rage and fear. "This is the end, Charles. Your secret has destroyed us." Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered indifferently. Inside, the Johnson family collapsed under the weight of jealousy, betrayal, and corruption. The scandal had reached its devastating climax, and the final twist was clear. Charles's secret hadn't just backfired. It had doomed them all.